Last season, only one team in the entire Premier League lost the ball in dangerous positions more than Manchester United. That's right, we were the second worst team in the first phase, regularly giving the ball away in dangerous positions. However, fast forward to this season, first game of the season against Arsenal, one of the best pressing teams on the entire planet, and suddenly Manchester United were able to play through the first phase on numerous occasions. Which leads to one question: has Amorim fixed the first phase problems? Now, just at a quick glance from a structural point of view, it doesn't look like Manchester United are doing too many things differently. We can see the centre-back still going into midfield, the other two centre-backs splitting a little bit wider, players perhaps not in their natural zones. However, what we do need to consider is the change in the psychological battle that is going on the front line. Ultimately, when we're trying to play out in the first phase, the real aim is to get the ball towards the final third. So that is one of the areas that we need to focus on first. Last season, Manchester United had players like Rasmus Højlund and Alejandro Garnacho playing across the front line. Both good footballers in their own right, but physically not the best, and also technically not the most secure yet in their game, which meant the opposition were comfortable and confident going man to man. So imagine this is Højlund here, and imagine this is Garnacho. The opposition were comfortable going man to man, knowing that if there was any more direct ball from Manchester United, the defenders were always going to win in those situations. So that meant the opposition felt they could go man to man, push players high up the pitch in every single position, and force United under pressure. However, this season that immediately changes, because Cunha and Mbeumo are players that not many teams are going to want to go man-to-man against, because they're too good. We saw in one moment Ben White was man-to-man with Matheus Cunha, and Cunha made him look like an absolute muppet. We also saw a moment where Calafiori was man-to-man with Bryan Mbeumo, and Mbeumo left him on his backside, and Calafiori picking up a booking. So that is immediately one of the effects of having new players in the Manchester United front line, better players in the front line. Teams are instantly going to pay us more respect. They are likely to defend with at least one extra defender across the back line to deal with these absolute menaces that we have in attack, and that's without even including 6'5" Benjamin Sesko. So if the opposition this season are going to defend with one more back here, it means that they're pressing over here with one less. The other thing that is interesting is the solution that Ruben Amorim has opted for in the first phase, and we're going to start off by looking at this on the tactics board, and then towards the end of the video we will look at some clips from the match to sort of back up what we're saying. And when I talk about options, I tend to think that you have two options for solution in the first phase build-up. If you want to play out from the back, but you're struggling, but you want to persist with it, you have two options. One is to drop a load of players really deep to overwhelm the opposition. Drop potentially 6 or 7, including the goalkeeper, 7 players deep in the first phase, trying to outnumber the opposition in these areas. It's unlikely that teams will press with 7 players this high up the pitch, so it should give you the extra man in the first phase, allowing you to play out from the back. However, I get the feeling that Amorim doesn't trust his squad technically, particularly when he makes the weird decision to put De Ligt and Casemiro in midfield. He doesn't trust these guys technically in the mini rondo situations to actually play out through the pressure. So therefore, he is opting for option number 2, which is the complete opposite. Rather than bringing loads of players deep to overload the opposition, you push them all forward. Particularly the wingbacks now take up a much higher starting position. The benefit of this is you simply create more space in deeper areas, and also you pin the opposition back a little bit. The fullbacks for the opposition can't come and press our wingbacks over here, instead they are being pinned back. What this does is it reduces the number of players that Manchester United are playing with in the first phase. Now only 5 if we include the goalkeeper. So there's less players, less people, but actually more space. And when there's more space, it means that these players can have a little bit more freedom. They don't have to be as rigid with their positioning. They can actually move about and drift into different areas. Now, it's all well and good saying that these players can drift into different areas, but at the end of the day, we know that Amorim is a manager that has sort of strict patterns that he wants his players to follow. And those are some of the patterns that we need to look at now. Once again, we'll start off with the tactics board. Eventually, we will get to the clips. Trust me, they are coming and they are important. But first of all, let's discuss some of the methods that we are looking out for from Manchester United. What United are trying to do in this game is let Altay Bayındır have time on the ball. The reason why United want to do that is to draw the Arsenal players in particular, Viktor Gyökeres. They're trying to draw him into this position here. We now have Leny Yoro free, but Bayındır can't pass to him because of Gyökeres. So the mission for United is to find a different way of getting the ball to Leny Yoro. And the key was Casemiro and De Ligt playing in midfield and the different movements that they were showing. So one movement that we would see from these two is the pair of them would rush towards the ball. Both players would sprint towards the ball like this. Of course, the knock-on effect is the Arsenal players follow them. So let's just leave this player wider initially. The two Arsenal players are going to follow our players into this position here when Bayindir has the ball. However, as you can see, that causes a problem for Arsenal because we now have a ridiculous amount of space in the middle. Therefore, to try and stop that, the Arsenal wider player is likely just to tuck in a little bit to try and leave his team less exposed in the middle. However, that means if we can move the ball into Casemiro and then pop the ball around the corner, Yoro has more time on the ball because the Arsenal wide player has been forced inside. As promised, here is the example of exactly this. You can see Casemiro and De Ligt both playing in midfield, and they both rush towards the ball. Declan Rice and Odegaard follow them. They have to. That is their pressing job. But you can see it is potentially going to leave a space in behind them. Well, it would if Martinelli isn't willing to go inside. But he is. He's a good defensive player. He works hard. So he just tucks himself inside the pitch a little bit to cover that space centrally. However, that means that when Manchester United pop the ball around the corner and work it wide, Leny Yoro now has all the time and space in the world to just carry the ball forward pretty much unchallenged in the first phase. Crucially, there were also other ways for Manchester United to move the ball forward in the first phase, and again it comes down to our two central midfielders and the amount of space that they now have to work into, meaning that they can be a bit more free with their movement. Previously, we saw both midfielders going towards the ball at the same time. Now what we're going to look at is when just one player moves into the deeper position, and it's a staggered situation in midfield. So someone like De Ligt is going to drop deeper and sort of curve his run deeper, which is important, which drags this player curved in with him. At the same time, Casemiro is going to make a curved run forward, which is going to drag this Arsenal player curved deeper with him. What we do now is essentially put these Arsenal midfielders on a vertical line, which defensively just isn't a good thing. So initially they start off in this position, meaning it's a little bit difficult to work the ball into the wide zones because this player could go and cover. However, the movement of the Manchester United midfielders means that Arsenal are now vertical with their positioning. So again, when we roll the ball into De Ligt, he has that first time option round the corner for Leny Yoro, who again has just so much time. Again, of course, I'm going to stick to my word and give you guys an example. Here are De Ligt and Casemiro in midfield. They make this movement. De Ligt comes towards the ball, Casemiro moves higher. It causes the Arsenal players to do something very similar, and eventually the Arsenal players end up vertical in a line in their defensive situation. This means that De Ligt has the easiest pass around the corner for Leny Yoro. We can see that Victor Gyökeres is up here. He is caught high. De Ligt plays the ball around the corner. Leny Yoro is just off shot on this occasion, but again, he can step forward. Now, just because United showed some quality and ability in the first phase to move through with shorter passing, that doesn't mean that they always wanted to. At the end of the day, the goal was to get the ball towards the final third as quickly as possible, or certainly I felt that was the plan from Manchester United in this game, which means at times we are going to go more direct, in particular to the two wide zones, because we've got a 2 versus 1 situations. Normally, our wing-backs are really deep, leaving us with the 1v1 when we send the long ball. However, as discussed already, our wing-backs were much higher in this game, so when we go long, we've actually got a 2 versus 1 against the opposition fullback, because Bukayo Saka is up here pressing high, and Martinelli was sort of being drawn and dragged about into all sorts of different positions. So this gives us that long ball option to play up to, get on the second ball, with our more physical forwards as well. It's clear to see how that's going to work. I think the wide angle of this shot actually captures this really nicely. You can see lots of Arsenal players reasonably high up the pitch. Importantly though, it's Martinelli here and it's Bukayo Saka here. But if you look behind them, where the two Manchester United wing-backs are, they are miles away. They have got so much room. Certainly enough room to get on the ball and play football. So that means Bayindir in goal does have the long option, and on this occasion he takes that option, he sends it long, and this is the benefit. Manchester United 2 versus 1 up against the Arsenal fullback because Bukayo Saka is absolutely miles away. We could also do it the other way. Even if we started off by playing the ball short, eventually in this game we actually saw Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in midfield, something we'll come back to a little bit later on, but it means that De Ligt is on the ball a little bit deeper on this occasion, and again he uses that long pass, and as he switches it, we're 2 versus 1 against the Arsenal fullback, so we can play out through the first phase and we can go long. Ultimately, United found it really easy to find solutions to Arsenal's pressing situation because of the structure and the intentions that Manchester United was showing. However, it does feel a little bit predictable. You know, for one game, it was a surprise. Arsenal were caught out and struggled to ever deal with it. However, over the long term, over the course of a season, United will need more solutions. The pattern will become quite obvious. We perhaps need a left-footed midfielder to try and change the angles. So rather than always bouncing it to Yoro, could we now bounce it the other side to Luke Shaw or Lisandro Martinez potentially when he's fit? That's something that we could look to do. The other option, though, is to do what Amorim did and try and get two central midfielders in the middle rather than two centre-backs. We finally eventually saw this in this game, and what you get when you play midfielders in here rather than centre-backs is more natural positioning, players that are comfortable to wander. You can see Bruno Fernandes receives the ball in the first phase. That ball is popped out to Lenny Yoro, but rather than standing still, Bruno, being a comfortable midfielder, actually then drifts wider to get onto the next ball and then has the confidence and also the ability to carry the ball forward down the right-hand side, and once again Manchester United progress the ball really easily and get towards the final third. Now, to answer the title of this video, has Ruben Amorim fixed it? Not completely. This is one match where it worked well. In order for it to be fixed, this has to be a common pattern. We have to see long-term success, sustainability from this new Manchester United build-up structure. But in terms of this game, against a really good pressing side, I think we did very well. I was worried coming into the game that without a lack of striker, we wouldn't have a focal point. We wouldn't have someone that we could go long to. We would get pressed in the first phase and therefore we would struggle. But that just wasn't the case. We played extremely well in the first phase, although I do think Arsenal were poor. We also had the option to go long, where we were dominant from a physical point of view. All in all, I think it was a really good pressing performance, which is why I wanted to make this video. But in terms of this video, it's now finished. There's nothing else to say. I think United were very good, but in terms of bigging it up further, we need to see it on a more regular basis. So for now, it is a case of wait and see what we see against Fulham, against Burnley, against Grimsby, teams like that, to really understand if we are improving in the first phase. So for now, there is nothing left to talk about, so I'm going to stop talking. That is that. Thank you guys very much for watching the video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.